Krishna, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari. सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी प्रभुपाद की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णववृंद की जय, नामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद से अद्वैत गदाधर शिवास आदि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गौ गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरिवर्धन की जय, वृंदावन धाम की जय, नवद्वीप धाम की जय, स्वामी तो भक्तवृंद की जय, गंगा माई की जय, जमुना माई की जय, तुलसी देवी की जय, भक्ति देवी की जय, स्वामी तो भक्तवृंद की जय। All glories to the assembled Lord. All glories to the assembled Lord. Thank you very much.
Looking for a lifeline in these tough times? Well, forget about stocks.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much for coming.
Of course.
And good to see you. How are you doing, Prabhu?
I am doing pretty well. I have Krishna has blessed me with more service than I can handle, so that's a good thing. Otherwise, Maya is just around the corner.
Yes, yes.
Okay. We're ready.
Hare Krishna. So I am going to put the verse on the screen.
Okay.
And let's see. Okay, so we have Canto 1, chapter 11, text number 6.
Verse 6, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Now, is this being streamed on YouTube also?
Yes, Prabhuji, yes.
If people on YouTube have questions for me, will you see them?
That I am not sure I'll be able to see them. Probably Krishna Prabhu might have, but he is not here today.
Okay, so I will open the YouTube link. So if somebody puts a question there,
you can see it.
Go up. The YouTube link is ISKCON Africa or something like that?
Yes.
ISKCON Africa Live.
Yes.
Let's see. Oh boy. Maybe you can send me the link in the chat because I don't.
Okay, I will do that.
Yeah, it didn't come up right away.
Okay.
And that way, if there's questions, I could see it.
Right.
Is this on Facebook also or just YouTube?
I think it's just YouTube.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Um, okay. And let's see, I'm signing into it now. I'm signed in. Okay. And I'll wait for the chat to come. Okay, so we have unknown participants on YouTube, and we have several on Zoom. So before we begin, I'd like each of you on Zoom to, if you could put your camera on and tell me where you are and something about yourself. And then if you had any question today that you would like me to touch upon. So at least those on Zoom can do that.
Okay, so devotees, you can turn on your cameras and introduce yourself to Prabhuji. Well, Prabhuji, I'll start with myself. I believe you know me.
Yes, of course.
My name is Sahadev the Rascal. I am a Diksha disciple of Dr. Tirtha Swami Maharaj. I am currently in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Oh, my good friend Sarvatma just went to Girinagri.
Oh, yeah, Girinagri is my temple, yes.
Yeah, he just went there 2 days ago. Okay.
What's the name?
Sarvatma and his
Oh,
wife.
Sarvatma.
Nanda.
Okay. I'll see him tomorrow. We have a funeral tomorrow, so I'll go to the temple tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay. Hare Krishna.
And okay, and thank you. And who else is here? Can somebody else identify themselves for me?
Yeah. Krishna Prabhu, I'm Dr. George.
Well, we'll begin with George. Where are you,
Yeah.
George?
Krishna Prabhu, I'm in Ghana.
Okay.
Yes,
On the
please.
coast.
Pardon me?
You're on the coast of Africa,
Yes, please. Yes,
on the
please.
ocean.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Very good. Okay, nice to meet you. And who else is here? Rajat Taruni? Oh,
Rajat Taruni.
Hare Krishna. My name is Brasa Toreni. I'm from Uruguay.
and where are you? Are you in Uruguay now?
Uruguay, yes.
Okay. Oh, my good friend Mahaprabhu is from Uruguay.
Oh,
Okay.
and where is he now?
Oh, say again?
Now where he's living? Is he here or?
Okay, a little hard to hear you. Don't know why.
Yeah, I think the line is breaking up.
Yeah. You may not be close enough to the microphone.
Is he living here or in another place?
Okay, still a little weak connection, so we'll just move on. Christina,
Yeah.
and where are you?
Perdón, pero yo no hablo inglés, hablo español.
Oh, she's Spanish.
Entiendo un poco inglés, pero no hablo. From Uruguay.
Poco español.
Sí.
Yeah,
Okay.
poco español, poco inglés. Okay. That's fine. Okay, and we have finally Stephen Halo. Where are you?
Stephen, you can unmute.
Hare Krishna,
Yes, where are you?
in Ghana.
Okay, so we have two in Ghana. Very good. Okay, and send me that link for, if you could, for
The YouTube.
YouTube.
All right.
Okay, so we'll begin. natasma te nata sadangri pankajam virincha vayanchaya surendra vanditam parayanam senam ichiatam param nayatra kula pavavet para Prabhu. The citizen said, "O Lord, you are worshipped by all the demigods like Brahma, the four sanas, and even the king of heaven. You are the ultimate rest for those who are really aspiring to achieve the highest benefit of life. You are the supreme transcendental Lord, and inevitable time cannot exert its influence upon you. The Supreme Lord is Sri Krishna, as confirmed in the Gita, Brahma Samhita, and other Vedic literatures. No one is equal to or greater than him, and that is a verdict of all scriptures. The influence of time and space is exerted upon the dependent living entities who are parts and parcels of Supreme Lord. The living entities are predominated Brahman, whereas the Supreme Lord is a predominating absolute or Brahman. As soon as we forget this clear fact, we are once in illusion, and thus we're put into threefold miseries, as one is put into dense darkness. The clear consciousness of the cognizant living being is God consciousness, in which one bows to him in all circumstances. So, so Krishna is arriving in Dwarka after being gone for some time. But when he arrives, this chapter describes how he is received. And one time, Prabhupada went to see devotees in Tokyo, early days of the movement. And it was his birthday, and nobody knew how to celebrate it properly, though they had seen Prabhupada do Vyasa Puja for his own guru, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. And so when they went to do Vyasa Puja for him, they had no flowers, but you have a pushpa ceremony. And they had taken Prabhupada's picture off the Vyasa-san and put it in the hallway upside down. So Prabhupada's picture is upside down in the hallway. There's no flowers. And then they had a junior person, which then was Burijan. He was junior, he was new, was asked to offer artik while there were senior devotees. So Prabhupada stopped the ceremony after a while and said, "This is not right. This is all wrong." So he said, "You can try again tomorrow." So then the next day they did it right. Prabhupada comes in, they wash his feet, they have flowers. The picture's not upside down. The most senior devotee, not the most junior, offers the artik, and they did it right. Because Prabhupada was teaching, how do we receive a great personality? So Krishna is being received, and this part of the Bhagavatam is teaching us etiquette. Now, every one of us has something in our heart that's not desirable. And Krishna discusses this in the Gita. He says in the Gita, "I'm explaining these secrets to you, Arjuna, because you are not envious." So we all have a little envy. Why can I not be the one being worshipped? Why am somebody not washing my feet? Why am I not given the best garland? Why this, why that? This is a little bit of envy. So by the way to get rid of envy, there's only one way to get rid of it that I know of. So the only way to get rid of envy is if I'm envious of Bhakta George, let's say he's bigger, stronger than me, more handsome than me, whatever reason I'm envious of Bhakta George. How can I get rid of that envy? Well, during the Prasadam serve-out line, I could dump a pot of dal on his head, but that doesn't get rid of the envy. That just gives me some revenge. And it brings out all the bad things in the heart. So to bring out the good things in the heart, if I'm envious of someone, I serve them. The way to get rid of envy is to serve. So if I find I'm envious of a god brother or god sister or god uncle or god nephew or anybody for that matter, I serve them, and we'll find the envy will dissipate. Because envy is what will keep us from Krishna. When we're envious, one of the 10 commandments is don't covet what your neighbor has. In other words, don't be envious. Your neighbor has a very fancy car and you have an old car. Don't be envious, because as soon as we're envious, it brings out all the bad things in the heart. So, when a great sadhu comes, or in this case, supreme person, there is an etiquette of how to receive them. These streets were all lined with perfumed water. There were unbroken seeds and fruits and nuts and flowers, and everything was freshly cleaned, and conch shells were blowing. It was received with this kind of wonderful affection. And later on, it's described that even the prostitutes were there, these beautiful prostitutes receiving Krishna. Now, sometimes people question why in the time of the Mahabharata were there prostitutes? Interesting question. First thing is, not everyone was Krishna conscious. We know that because Krishna says in the Gita, the science was lost and I've come to bring it back. So we know that the science was lost. Second, sometimes men are dissatisfied at home and they'll go out to a prostitute. So it's not that that's encouraged, it's strongly discouraged. But it's like in certain states in America, there are liquor shops, and the government is very much against alcohol. But some people are going to drink anyway. So then they have government liquor shops, very little advertising, fixed price, a little higher price. The government makes profit off of the tax. And in this way, people are going to drink. It's a controlled atmosphere where they can the government can control it and it doesn't get out of hand. Now, there's hardly any states left that do that. But when I was young, several states they wouldn't sell liquor at a gas station. Now all the gas stations sell liquor. But one of the most dangerous things anyone can do is drink and drive. To me, it's monumentally stupid for gas stations to sell liquor, but they do. But when I was young, that wasn't allowed. So the government would do it. Doesn't mean the government wants people to drink, but they want to control it. Similarly, the government allowed prostitutes, not that the government wanted prostitutes, but if we're going to have it, we might as well keep it regulated so that it doesn't get out of hand. So 1 second, I got the link. Okay. And I got the link, and if there's any comments, theoretically I could see it on my other screen. Okay. Well, nobody gave me a thumbs down yet. This is good. This is a good start. No thumbs down yet. We're waiting for it. Okay. We're watching for it. So the first point is how to receive a guest nicely, because it's so important in our culture. I remember one time, Haridayananda Maharaj was Grahasta temple president in Gainesville, Raya. And And one of the leading sannyasis, it was Kirtananda at that time, showed up at the temple unannounced. So that was an unusual thing. He showed up unannounced because we had no internet or cell phones, so that would happen. So he immediately offered him a seat and water and said, "Are you hungry?" He said, "Yes." And he went into the kitchen. And on the counter, there was a plate about to go on the altar for the Lord. So what did he do? He took the plate and transferred the Lord's bhoga, which had not been offered, onto a serving plate and gave it to Kirtananda Swami. This is maybe 1970. And he gave it to him immediately. And the pujari was very upset. This is the Lord's offering. You can't do that. You can't take the Lord's offering and give it to someone. How can you do such a thing? But in his heart, he knew to do that. Later on, in a lecture or purport, I forgot which now, Prabhupada said that is the etiquette. When a guest arrives, even you take it from the Lord's plate, you give it to your guest. Because when a guest arrives, that's how important it was. So the difference between a neophyte and advanced devotee is this. The neophyte devotee is very concerned about details. Ooh, yesterday was Ekadasi. Do I have to break my fast at exactly 6 hours, 41 and a half minutes? Otherwise, I go to hell. And that's a very immature position. The advanced devotee is thinking, what can I do to share Krishna with everybody? Prabhupada said, we're not the International Society for Rules and Regulations. We're the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Not that these rules and regulations aren't helpful. They are, but it's not the main point. So the main point, as Haridananraj saw, was to feed the Vaishnava, especially the most, at that point, Kirtananda was probably the most senior devotee in the movement, the first sannyas. So immediately he fed him. So that's the etiquette. When someone comes, we take good care of our guests. Now, I'll tell you a story. There was one devotee. He had, as we say in our jargon, blooped. He had left the movement for 20 years. And then he came back, decided he wanted to start visiting temples again. So he came back with long hair and basically in disguise, no neck beads. And he pretended he wasn't a devotee. He went by his born name, not his initiated name. And they treated him so well. And they said, oh, we're so happy to have you here, a new bhakta. And he just pretended he was a new bhakta. And that was going on till a visitor came to the temple and recognized him. You're so-and-so Das. I know you from a long time ago. And he confessed, yes, I am that person. And then the temple president said, well, why? Didn't you tell us? He said, because when devotees go to a Hare Krishna temple, they're often not treated very nice. But when the new bhakta comes, they treat him so well and give him every facility. So if I pretended I was a new bhakta, I would be treated much better. So for that reason, he pretended not to be. That's very clever. The devotee who did that, I thought was very, very clever. He pretended not to be a initiated devotee. But we see the danger if we don't follow proper etiquette. Because proper etiquette, any Vaishnav shows up or any guest shows up, we always treat them well. In other temples, I used to be vice president of Houston Temple in the 70s. And we started really building up a huge Sunday feast program. And we had a set of very good brahmacharis, and they would all sit together at the Sunday feast and eat enough for 10 people, each individual. It was a really good feast. So, but we maybe have 100 guests, and the guests were all alone. So I made a rule. I said, no I said to the servers, you cannot serve out any temple devotees unless on each side of them there is a guest. So if the devotees are sitting, two of them together, neither one of them would get any prasadam. The server would skip them and move on to the next people. So eventually the brahmacharis learned if they want to eat the Sunday feast, they better spread out and meet the new guests, because our business is to bring people to Krishna. Our business isn't to stuff our mouths at a Sunday feast. But sometimes those happen. So in this, Lord Krishna's entrance into Dwarka, we're learning so much etiquette, how everyone, based on their social position, would receive the Lord in the proper way, till eventually the Lord got to his palace. Then when the Lord got to his palace, he had 16,108 wives. Now, sometimes people criticize that, oh, Krishna, he's not really God. Okay, fine. But find me someone else who can have 16,108 wives. There was a book written once, an anti-cult book, talking about the different cults, some Christian cults, some ISKCON was in there, other groups they called cults. And some of them were just mainstream religion, frankly. So when they describe the devotees, they said one amazing thing in this book. They said, and their conception of God is that he can lie down on his bed and breathe. And when he breathes, millions and millions of universes come out. Isn't that absurd? And I was thinking, no, that sounds like God to me. I mean, I lie down and breathe, millions and millions of germs come out. Maybe they're COVID, I don't know. Millions of germs come out, but when Krishna lies down, millions of universes come out. That's how powerful Krishna is. So Krishna has that, that's Krishna. He can actually marry 16,108 wives. And so in this chapter, there's also very detailed discussion of how the different people receive Krishna. One verse is a lot to me, is very interesting. Expert dramatists, artists, dancers, singers, historians, genealogists, meaning ones who know the history of the forefathers of Krishna, learned speakers, all gave their contributions inspired by the superhuman pastimes of the Lord. And the Lord himself approached them and offered respect to each and every one of the citizens who came. So it was very reciprocal, offered respect. That's why when I begin my class, I like knowing who's here, because I respect you. You're spending your day trying to hear about Krishna. So I want to, at the beginning of class, get to know you, not be impersonal. It describes later on the mighty Lord greeted everyone by bowing his head, exchanging greetings, embracing, shaking hands, looking, smiling, and awarding benedictions even to the lowest rank. So it depends on who they were. If somebody was one of his relatives, he might have embraced them. Somebody else, he might have shook hands. Somebody else, he smiled at them. Depending on who they were, he reciprocated properly. Krishna says in the Gita, as you surrender to me, as you surrender to me, I reward you accordingly. So Krishna then was reciprocating with each person according to their own particular circumstances. And that's what we do. When I go to, let's say, Mayapur, so there are so many devotees. So I greet them, try to greet them all by their particular circumstances. But in each case, never make anyone feel less. If somebody's my friend, I greet him. I've maybe seen him in a long time. We have a hug. Somebody very senior, I'll offer respectful obeisances. Somebody junior who I know, I'll ask him, how are you? What's going on in your life? Anything I can do for you? So we reciprocate with everyone according to their particular circumstances. This is called civilization. This is high civilization. And we have low civilization. Low civilization means we follow no etiquette. Everyone's the same. And we treat everyone with equal disrespect. There's a very famous singer in America. You might have heard of her, Aretha Franklin. Anybody who's heard of Aretha Franklin? If you have your cameras, you can raise your hand. She's a gospel singer. And very,
she recently passed away.
Yeah, yes, she recently did. She's one of the most famous singers in America. She came up from the gospel tradition and then sang popular tunes, but in the gospel tradition. So one of her most famous songs is called Respect. R-E-S-P-E-C-T. So one of my services in ISKCON is to mediate conflicts between devotees. So I'm sitting there and people are growling at each other. And they're doing all these things and making their noises and making faces and sitting like this. And so sometimes I pause the mediation. I say, 1 minute, I have to play a song. And I play Aretha Franklin. I'll play it for you. So when that happens, what I'll do is I'll play Aretha Franklin, and all of a sudden everyone becomes more respectful. It's very powerful to do that. Can you give me screen share?
Yes, Prabhuji. I was actually going to put it on, but if you want to.
Oh, I can put it on. I have it right here.
Okay.
I just need screen share capability.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'm going to do that.
Okay.
All right, you can do that now.
Okay. Okay. Oops, right, that's the wrong screen. That didn't, oh, here it is. Let's see if we can get the sound. Well, enough of that. But the background is a little hard to hear. Is she goes to the chorus, R-E-S-P-E-C-T, respect. So when I'm sitting and doing conflict resolution and devotees are fighting, I just put on Aretha Franklin. And because in America, everyone knows that song. Anyway, at least anyone, almost everyone knows it. It's so popular. So people all of a sudden realize they start thinking, am I really showing respect or not? And sometimes a little popular song like that gets people to think for a moment. Am I really showing respect? And this is the secret of our dealings among devotees. We're with someone, I'm angry at someone, no matter how angry I am I showing them respect? And I'm angry at my husband, I'm angry at my wife, I've been horribly disrespected, I've been mistreated, I've been stepped on, I've been insulted. Every one of you, these things have happened to. It has to. We live in this material world. And when this happens, our own false ego comes to the surface. And when our false ego rises to the surface, then we get angry. And we know lust, anger, bewilderment, loss of memory, we really lose our sense of who we are. So the way to deal with this, according to the Bhagavatam, is the Aretha Franklin way. You show respect. So how do you show respect to someone who's mistreating you? It's not easy. It means you have to swallow your false pride, your humility, and you do the details. If somebody who you don't like comes to your house, even if your enemy comes to your house, you give them a sitting place. No one ever comes to my house without being offered a glass of water in the sitting place. I might feel like pouring that water right over their head, but I give them a glass to drink. So sometimes it's something inside me wants to just pour it right on their head because they were so nasty and they did a terrible thing. But according to this chapter and many other chapters, we show respect. And by showing respect, we tame our false ego. And ultimately, we win people over. Now, it doesn't mean we lie down and become a doormat. Let's say some spouse, a husband, hits the wife or something. Doesn't mean the wife says, oh, can I turn the other cheek? Now hit me here. In America, we have strict laws. If somebody tells me their husband hit him, I say, call the police. You know, it doesn't mean you become a doormat, but nevertheless, we still deal respectfully. We may have to call the police at times, but we deal respectfully. In America, there's been a lot of, I mean, all of you have read this, a lot of difficulties with the police, especially we had incidences like the famous George Floyd, who was killed by a policeman in Minneapolis. Well, I serve as an advisor to the police department in Gainesville. We have a very, very, very good police department. And so we discuss these issues a lot. And the key to making a successful police department here is our policemen and policewomen are trained over and over again. No matter who they're dealing with, they show respect. They may even be putting on handcuffs on somebody. They may be pinning him to the ground. They may be shooting their taser at him to give 5,000 volts of electricity to them. They may be doing all these things, but when they're done, they still show respect. And because the police are so trained, even if a policeman makes an error and mistreats someone, there's no riots, there's no problems. The reason why we had trouble with George Floyd is one officer unnecessarily leaned on his neck and killed him. It was absurd what he did. But there was so many other incidences like that, that it built up to a breaking point. So for police to be successful, they have to, especially Kshatriyas, they're supposed to be under a warrior code, which means etiquette and showing respect. During the Battle of Kurukshetra, the soldiers were fighting each other, I mean, viciously. Then as soon as the sun set, the battle would end, because it's not fair to fight when you can't see your enemy. And then the opposite sides, because soldiers knew each other, they would go sit down and play chess together just to unwind and relax. The people who were just before that were trying to kill each other, but they had respect for each other. It was just their duty. And they would sit down and play chess. There was one very famous incident from World War I, very, very famous incident. World War I was one of the nastiest wars. The 20th century was one of the most deadly centuries in the history, recorded history that we know of. In the modern, the history of the last few thousand years. And we had there was in France, near the German border, there were these trenches. And the French and English were in one trench, and the opposite trench were the Germans and their allies. And the soldiers had to live in these horrible trenches. It's all humid, there's no proper place to pass, it's just miserable. And then they were using weapons that are illegal now, but they were shooting mustard gas. So when mustard gas is shot at you, the shell explodes in the trench, and everyone who breathes it, their lungs are permanently damaged. They either die or they wish they had died. It was one of the most brutal, nasty wars ever. And but it was Christmas Eve, and so some of the soldiers in the British side started singing Christmas carols. Something like Silent Night, Golden Night. They're singing Christmas carols. And then the Germans started singing Christmas carols because both sides were Christian for the most part. And then one of them hung a white flag up, and the other side put a white flag up. And the Germans on one side and the French and the English on the other came out of their trenches, because that meant there was a truce. And they were sitting, eating, and singing Christmas carols together. And the next day they went back to trying to kill each other. But they actually had, for that brief moment, there was a moment of humanity in the war where people were showing each other respect. And the same thing happened about of Kurukshetra, but that was every night. They would show respect. This just happened once in World War I, but it was a very famous incident. So these are some of the lessons that we're learning as Krishna enters Dwarka. Now, I've been to Dwarka. Dwarka is an interesting place. It's in the state of Gujarat on the west coast of India, not far from Pakistan. It's on the ocean. And there's a beautiful Dwarkanath temple there. But that's not the same Dwarka where Krishna was. Because that where Krishna was flooded. The city sank. So there's a museum in Dwarka, and the archaeologists in the museum have gone into the ocean and dug up artifacts from the bottom of the ocean of an ancient Dwarka city. And so we know that the modern Dwarka is not the real Dwarka, that there was an ancient city in the ocean. We know that from Shastra. And the archaeologists have found remnants from the ancient city, seals and jugs and whatever remnants they have that they know are older. Now it gets very interesting. They've run ground penetrating radar, other techniques to go deeper, because it's very hard. You can't really dig under the ocean, because you start digging, the water comes in. It's very, very difficult to do archaeology in the ocean. So they ran some surveys, and they can find there's another city beneath that city. So you have the current Dwarka on the land. You have an older Dwarka on the bottom of the ocean. And beneath that, there's even an older Dwarka, but it's impossible to dig and find out what it is. So I found that very fascinating when I was there. Then there's Beit Dwarka. Can somebody tell me what happened on Beit Dwarka? It's an island off the coast of Dwarka, but there's a very famous Krishna pastime happened there. Does anybody know? I'll tell you. Sudama Brahman. when Sudama Brahman, he was Krishna's friend from the Gurukula, and which is near current Ujjain in India. And he was very poor, and his wife kind of convinced him, you ought to go see your friend Krishna. And all he could bring, he was so poor, was some chipped rice. Chipped rice is the rice that none of us would want to eat. It's just little remnants left over. It's not even good rice at all. But it's all he had. So he packed a little bag of chipped rice and he brought it to see Krishna. And Krishna was so happy to see his old friend and embraced him and received him really very well. He asked how he was. Everything's fine. He wouldn't dare ask anything from Krishna. So Krishna says, what's in your hand? He says, oh, nothing. He was so embarrassed, he didn't even want to give it to Krishna. Krishna says, no, what's in your hand? So he gave him the chipped rice. And Krishna was so happy because that's all he had. He was so poor. He only had one set of clothes, so poor. And Krishna thanked him for the rice. And then he went back. And when he went back to his home, it had turned into a palace. And his wife had beautiful clothes and jewelry. Krishna had blessed him with extreme opulence. And he was detached from it. There's a whole inner story of why this happened to Sudama and what the history was before he met Krishna, how this happened. But without going into that story now, there's not time for that. So, Beit Dwarka is where that incident apparently happened. So when you go from Dwarka, you have to take a boat to this island, Beit Dwarka. And to do that, you go on these boats that are so low to the water that you can't believe the boats don't sink. And they're rowboats. So you fill it up with more people than you can fit in there, and then they row across. And when you're at the shore, there's all these merchants selling you bags of rice. And they're doing that. I watched them. This was amazing to me to watch. The people, there's no Westerners there. It's all Indian pilgrims. And when they're going to Beit Dwarka, they're calculating, well, Krishna gave a handful of chipped rice and he got a palace. So I'm going to bring a whole bag of rice to the deities in Beit Dwarka. And if Sudama got a palace, imagine what I'm going to get. And you can see them doing the calculation in their brain as they buy the rice from these merchants selling it to them. I was watching this. I was just simply, here we are in the land of Krishna. We could be approaching Krishna for devotional service, and they're trying to do a business deal with Krishna. It was an incredible sight to see. It made me want to go deeper into knowing Krishna and get away from this place. But it was a curiosity. So now it's 1:52, and I think we'll stop here and leave time for questions or comments or reflections. You can tell me something you learned today, or something you disagree with, or ask a question, or make a funny joke.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for the class. So, dear devotees, whoever has a question can raise up their hands by using the emoji, and you'll be asked to unmute. Prabhuji, I have a question about respect.
Yeah.
In my own little experience, as well as including myself, my observation is that, if not always, but most of the time, when people show respect to other people, they only showing respect because, one, either out of fear that if I do not respect this person, I might lose my job. I might lose something. Or two, people show respect because they're looking for a favor. So how how can one truly show respect to other people, not out of fear or not out of wanting to gain something from that particular individual? How do we do that?
Well,
Hare Krishna.
and every time I give a class to this audience, you always ask a very good question. That's a very, very astute question. The question, there's a few ways to look at this. One time I was with Satsarup Maharaj, and long time ago, and I said to him, sometimes I don't feel like dancing at Artik. And he said, I understand that. That happens to me too. Just dance anyway, and soon you'll feel like dancing at Artik. Just do it anyway. Because Prabhupada said, just do the Swami two-step. So similarly, sometimes we don't feel like showing respect, but if we do it, it gets rid of the envy, and our heart will automatically start showing respect. So we just do it anyway. Now, I have breakfast every Saturday morning with the mayor of my town. I'm an advisor to him on various matters. So every Saturday I meet with the mayor. And he said to me recently, he said, it's very tough being in this position because I'm the mayor. So everyone comes to me and says wonderful things about me. Oh, because, you know, he's powerful. They say all these wonderful things about me, but nobody will tell me the truth of how I'm doing, except you. He knows I'll tell him the truth, what I like or don't like. That's why we're friends. And he says it's very difficult when you get to be in a high elected official and everyone wants something from you. So they're all saying nice things. Oh, that was a wonderful speech you just gave. But the person was sleeping during the whole speech. And I really like your policy on this, but they disagree with you on everything. So you can't really ever get the truth. And Krishna describes later on the Gita that the mode of goodness is speaking the truth in a beneficial way. So you speak the truth, but you don't walk up to somebody and say, boy, are you ugly. You know, that's the truth. You think they're ugly. You don't walk up to people and say, boy, are you ugly, because that's not beneficial. That's not, so you don't say the truth that way. So similarly, being a politician, they have trouble hearing the truth. And it depends on our relationship. Now, the mayor and I are very good friends, so I can speak like friends do. If I am with someone who's my senior, I don't speak as friends unless they give me permission to do so. And but every time we're showing respect, and this is all in this chapter in detail, according to the various social positions. But if your question is, what if you don't mean it? Do it anyway. If I don't want to dance at Artik, I don't mean it. I just do it anyway. And soon enough, I want to dance at Artik. So if I don't feel like showing respect, I do it anyway. Soon I'll feel like showing respect. Does that answer your question?
Yes, Prabhu, it does, but it also raises another question. Because even if you don't feel like doing it, just do it anyway. Because with time, we hope that that will become part of you. Now, that leads to this question. I once had an instructor. She was a nutritionist instructor. So being a nutritionist instructor, Like, she was teaching the students how to read your ingredients on everything you buy. And she was talking about how dangerous it is to drink just a can of soda. However, this instructor, every single day she came to the classroom, came with a can of soda. So my question is, well, you are teaching us that this soda is not good. We should not be drinking it. But you always come to the class with a can of soda. So a devotee, as devotees, we have regulative principles we follow. Now, if one is not following any of these 4 regulative principles, does that devotee have the strength, the audacity to tell others that these are the principles we follow? And simply because the devotee is not following the principles, does that mean that he should bury our principles to the world because he's not doing it? So in this way, where does the devotee stand? What should the devotee do?
Well, Gandhi was once, he would have an audience every week where anyone could see him. And so this lady came to Gandhi with her son, said, my son eats too much sweets. Will you tell him to please stop eating so much sweets? And it's not good for his health. Gandhi said, okay, come back next week, I'll tell him. So she comes back next week, waits in line. You know, it's a whole procedure to do this. And then Gandhi says, his son, don't eat so many sweets, it's not good for you. And the lady said, why didn't you tell him that last week? I had to come all the way back and wait in line to see you. Gandhi said, because I was still eating sweets, I had to stop first. So there's a greater potency if we're following. But even if we're not following, or we're not following perfectly, and hardly any of us are perfect in anything, when's the last time any one of us on this call chanted our rounds and heard every mantra? I mean, it just doesn't, you know, it's just, the mind is like that. So, but I give classes telling people how to concentrate and hear their mantra. But I can't say I hear every mantra. I'm trying. So Prabhupada said over 150 times, I counted, that Krishna conscious is a gradual process. So what counts in Krishna conscious is not, are you successful or not? What counts is which direction are you going? And Prabhupada was much more concerned what direction we're going. Are we improving ourselves? That's what counts. So somebody who's not perfect, even the lady who's drinking the soda. Now, if she was a little more honest, she'd say, I'm drinking soda, but it's not so good. And so please don't you drink too much. I'm trying to stop. But if she's a hypocrite, total hypocrite, she'll have very little potency. But she's right. If you drink too much soda, it's just sugar water. It's not good for you. You get diabetes and other things. It's just not good for you to have too much. So, but who knows? Maybe she only has the one soda a day, and maybe she has digestive troubles. And so she brings a soda to class because the little fizzy water helps her in her digestion. So she's advocating don't drink soda, but she's taking it as medicine. And that happened with Prabhupada. One time, Gaur Hari went out to the store to get some sodas, some 7-Up. And he was sneaking it back in the temple, because in those early days, we just only ate things from that were offered to the deities in the temple. But and Prabhupada saw him. He said, come here. And he kind of hid the bag behind his back, and Prabhupada said, what do you have in there? And so he took it out very sheepishly and embarrassed, showed Prabhupada the can, and Prabhupada read the ingredients: lemon, lime, citric acid. Ooh, very good. I'll have one. Because it was good for Prabhupada's digestion. He said, this is healthy for his digestion. But then when Prabhupada went to another temple, because people had heard Prabhupada had a 7-Up. So he went to another temple and there were bottles of 7-Up all over the place. And he was very upset. What are you doing? This is nonsense. So just because Prabhupada had a 7-Up, yada yada, chati straightas, whatever the great men do that come him and follow, doesn't mean we should be drinking 7-Up all day. One time, Prabhupada was on an airplane flying to India, and he was in first class. So he was sitting next to Jaya Tirtha. And Jaya Tirtha told me this story. And so in first class, once you're seated, they serve you a drink. So they served Prabhupada a drink, and they served Jaya Tirtha a drink because he was sitting in first class next to Prabhupada. And Jaya Tirtha wouldn't drink it till Prabhupada did. So then Prabhupada drank it. It was very nice. And he nodded. Jaya Tirtha drank his. And then Jaya Tirtha goes to Prabhupada. Prabhupada, that's champagne. It's not 7-Up. And Prabhupada just started laughing. He thought it was very funny. He didn't drink anymore, but he thought it was very funny. So somebody might have been, that was before we had cell phones, but somebody would film that. And if they filmed that and sent it to the temples, and all the devotees would be drinking champagne. So there's that. It's better we not judge. Even this teacher who was saying don't drink, maybe she was being a hypocrite, or maybe she had a good reason. Sometimes it's like that. So better we be strict with ourselves and liberal with others than strict with others and liberal with ourselves. So that's the lesson to be learned. Okay, it's 2:06, so I don't like going over an hour because by then I'll put everyone to sleep. Is there any other final questions, reflections, comments? Okay. With
Prabhu, I really love this. Be strict on yourself, liberal on others. I think that's a very key point. I think everyone should try to imbibe and practice.
Which point was that?
Be strict on yourself and a liberal
Always.
on others. Yes.
Yeah, that's the sign of advancement, is we're very strict with ourselves and liberal with others. Okay. The sign of neophyte is we're very strict with others, but very liberal with ourselves. And then we become hypocrites. A very important point. It requires a certain humility, and that humility is not always easy to get. I have to struggle with it every day of the week. So that's what we have to do. I don't see any questions in the chat.
Well, probably since nobody has a question, if I may ask
okay.
My last question.
Sure.
And that has to do with grieving. Okay. We're reading from this particular text how the citizens of Dwaraka, when they saw and when they heard Lord Krishna blow his conch shell, and they all ran, they met him, even though they knew him. They were all, Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport, I think in the previous purport, which is verses 4 and 5, that these are eternal associates of the Lord, so they never forgot Krishna. Yet they were feeling the separation, the physical separation, because Krishna was not there. They were feeling it. And so when they heard Krishna coming, they all ran to meet him. We also hear Lord Chaitanya prayed that without seeing Krishna, even a moment appears to be like 12 years or more. Now, in social science, there is a period for grieving. Like if you lost a loved one, we all grieve differently. But if you grieve past a certain number of years or whatever, then it's considered a disease. But in the case of Vaishnavas and Krishna, and say devotees and the spiritual master, it appears like the disappearance of the guru or Krishna is like an eternal grief. So should devotees try to get over the grief because it could be seen as a disease, or it is just something that stays with you? I'm asking this question because it's a struggle I have, because I do not have Bhaktivedanta Maharaj with me here physically, and I do not have any means of connecting to the other world. I'm a grossly mundane person, so I miss that physical contact that I used to have with him. And so it's always a problem for me. And I do not know if that is ever going to leave me at some point, that I wouldn't have to grieve. But since you are an experienced devotee, I'm asking this question. Is it a disease to be grieving over? Okay.
If we get too depressed, that's not good. Most of us didn't know how to grieve very well. When Prabhupada left, frankly, if we had grieved and taken a year off before initiating and doing all these things, we wouldn't have had so much trouble in the 80s. But we didn't know how to grieve. We were in our 20s. Hardly our parents were all alive. We didn't know death. You know, some grandparent had died, but we just didn't know death. When Tamal Krishna Maharaj died, then I learned to grieve because I was very close with him. And when he died, I cried every day for a year. And in every culture, there is a grieving period. Usually goes about a year. And I found in my own tradition, it was 11 months. And I found miraculously after 11 months, not that I was crying all day, but every day I would stop and pause and look at his picture, and I'd cry for a while. Just a private thing I did. And after a year, 11 months, it kind of faded. So time cures it. But Prabhupada used to say his spiritual master was always with him. So you're talking about Bhakti Tirtha Swami. Now, I knew him very well. We had some amazing times together when he was Ganesham and then when he was Bhakti Tirtha Swami. And he was one of the most lovely devotees the movement ever had. And his loss is irreplaceable. But he left enough Vani that if we stick with our attitude to serve him, then gradually that grief of not being able to talk face to face with him will fade. It will always be there. It should always be there. Because there's a certain love in separation. And you're learning right now by you feeling that separation from him, you are learning about the love in separation from Krishna, something we all need to learn. So this is a great lesson for you. But if you're grieving too much, then there's something called Karuna Care, run by Ram Baru, in which devotees who they cannot deal with their grief, they offer grief counsel. So if you find that sometimes I just miss him so much, it's just so hard, that's normal and good. But if you find that you're having trouble following his instructions, and because you're grieving too much, in a case like that, then you can contact Karuna Care, Karuna, Ram Baru, and a grief counselor will help you get past it. Does that help your question?
Yes, Prabhu, yes, it does.
Very, very good. I mean, I go through these things too, and to not grieve is very dangerous. To grieve too much is very dangerous. Krishna says in the Gita, don't eat too much, don't eat too little. Don't sleep too much, don't sleep too little. I will add one more verse, Brahma Tirtha Uvacha. Don't grieve too much, don't grieve too little.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you so much,
That's
Prabhuji.
Brahma Tirtha Uvacha.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much.
Okay.
I hope you all have a blessed day, and the holy name is close to you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, don't leave yet. We're going to ask all the devotees to unmute so we can chant Hare Krishna to express our appreciation having you. So devotees, please let us all chant Hare Krishna, big one, to honor Prabhu's presence. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. His Grace Brahma Tirtha Prabhu ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for everything. Okay, Hare Krishna devotees, thank you so much. You all have a blessed weekend. And by Guru Krishna's grace, we'll meet again next week on Monday. Hare Krishna.